The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Access Television, the City of Oshkosh, the Oshkosh Cable Television Advisory Commission, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi again, everyone, and welcome to On Oshkosh. I'm Cheryl Hentz, along with former Oshkosh Mayor and City Councilwoman Melanie Bloechl. Every 4 to 6 weeks, what Mel and I do is we have a little segment of our own called Another Viewpoint, and it's just kind of where we kind of tee off on some things that are bothering us a little bit about things going on in the city, or the county, or the state, or the country, for that matter.
Or the world.
And we also talk about things that that are good things and that are nice things to talk about. And speaking of that, you know, we're taping this on August 7th, and I did see one very nice thing today that I would like to see more of. It was just a whole bunch of people, and when I say a whole bunch, I mean like 100 or more people. I don't know where they were biking from, but coming up Bowen Street from almost like the Neenah area. And I'm not saying that they were coming from Neenah, but they were coming in that direction on County Road A and into the city, just biking around the city. And I saw them in other places throughout the city during the day. So,
Well, you know why that is.
Why?
Well, because have you seen gas prices today? $1.67 a gallon. I mean, we're all going to be wearing those little helmets and pedaling around. I'm going to have to get a lot more exercise.
I got to get some air in my bike tires, I guess,
I
if
need
that's
to
the case.
air someplace
But it was just really nice to see. I mean, it was a gorgeous morning. It was a little on the humid side, muggy and so forth, but it was just a really nice thing to see. You know, all those people enjoying biking around the city. So. Whoever they were, it was, you made my morning. Some other things, though, that aren't so special.
It really doesn't take a lot to make your day, does it?
Well, it's not something that you see that often. I mean, you must admit, you don't see 100 or more people biking all at once. But anyway, it was nice to see. However, on the flip side, there are some things that aren't so pretty to see or to experience. One of the things is the stormwater utility. The City Council has finally passed it. They've set a rate and passed the rate. We recently had Steve Hentz, the Oshkosh Mayor and President of the Council on, and he was talking about the rate and so forth. Mm-hmm. It's $19 basically for each homeowner. Now, is that on a quarterly basis? Or
So I thought that's what he said, is every quarter.
I couldn't recall what he had said.
And the first one's going to come in the fourth quarter, which
fourth
depending on how
quarter
your
this
bill
year.
rotates, could be January, February, or March.
But one thing that is still, I guess, open for debate is the appeals board that Mayor Hentz wants to bring forward, and that would be basically an appeals board where people who feel that they've somehow been aggrieved by the process and they don't like the rate that they're paying or whatever. Mm-hmm. Chances are this is going to come in the form of business owners, I would think, or
I can almost guarantee it.
the big not-for-profits, but where they would be able to go before this appeals board, and the way Mayor Hentz put forth the process to us is that first they would plead their case to Dave Potak, the Director of Public Works. Mm-hmm. From there, it would go to Dick Wolink, the City Manager. Correct. And from there, the way it's set up right now, it would move on to the City Council. However, what Mayor Hentz is proposing is the creation and formation of a 5-member appeals board that would be quasi-judicial. So what that means is their decision would be final. The council would not
couldn't override it.
Right, they would not make any kind of a determination in that regard.
I hate that idea.
Well, I know you do, and we have differing ideas on that. And why do you hate it?
Well, because I just think that I understand what Mayor Hentz is trying to do. I think Steve has gone a long way in trying to be inclusive of people and participation of the public. I do think that he's done a good job of that in televising a lot of the meetings that weren't televised before. But I also think that he's hiding behind a skirt on this one. I think, and as I talked to Steve about this before, I think that the council is finding itself in controversial situations, dealing with controversial subjects, and abrogating its responsibility and saying, you know, okay, we've set this all up, and if anybody's got a problem with it, you go to the Citizens Committee because we've done all we're going to do. And I think that if you have the responsibility to legislate, lay down all the rules, set all the rates, set all the parameters, then you should hear all the complaints that are associated with the rules that you've set forth and why this is not working. Because if you don't know why it's not working, how are you ever going to be able to fix it?
Well, I think they'll still hear the complaints. I would be willing to bet that if...
So then why not just do your job?
Well...
because it's difficult, and I'll tell you
No,
what.
I don't think it's that. I don't think it's that. And as anyone who is a regular viewer of this show knows, I have not been the biggest fan of Mayor Hentz in recent months. I've written some pretty, I'm not going to call them scathing editorials, but I have taken
I'll
him
call
to...
them scathing.
He would probably have a different word for them.
Yeah.
But I have taken him to task on a number of occasions. Respectfully, I have, but nonetheless, I have taken him to task. On this particular point, though, I don't know that it's really hiding behind, any skirt, Mel. I really don't. I mean,
Well, I think
they
he
are
was-
not qualified. I mean, what
No, well,
qualifies
but
them
here's
to
the
make
thing.
decisions
What
that
qualifies-
geologists should
What
be
makes them
making?
qualified to be council members and legislators?
Well, I understand what you're saying, but I mean, they have a lot more knowledge of different things that are going on in the city. This, we're talking about water retention and water detention and things like that. It's the same thing. I mean, you appointed me to the Board of Zoning Appeals. That is also quasi-judicial, and the only ones who can overturn our decisions, not the city council, but rather across the street from council chambers at the county courthouse. And this would be very much the same thing. So, I guess the same argument could be made there as far as the Board of Appeals or the Board of Review.
I guess my concern is that if you feel as though the city council is educated and sophisticated enough to come up with the parameters that people are forced to live by, and that includes the stormwater utility. If you're saying that they are competent enough to come up with the parameters, the fee structure, all the groundwork, why wouldn't they be competent and qualified enough to know whether or not an appeal or a credit was justified based on their criteria?
Because you're dealing, the way I understand it, you're dealing more with issues of geology, hydrology, things like that, and that's why he wants to put, if this is approved, he wants to put a geologist or a hydrologist on board. He wants to put an attorney on board.
But you've already, I guess my point is that you are always going to have people that no matter what they're told by what expert are going to fight it to the nth degree. Now, we have city staff members. Dave Potek is a very educated individual in all of the areas that we've just spoken of. Water retention, hydrology, engineering. Why would that, when you go to him and he says, okay, you've presented all your information to me, but based on the parameters that the council has set forth and what's in the best interest of the city as a whole, I deny your appeal, or I deny your credit based on the following criteria, and has to write a report or a rejection. Why would that not suffice? And it's what Steve said. It is the perception of trust with an administration that has already put forth a utility that the business community doesn't like. So all we're really doing is gagging on gnats here. All we're really doing is trying to appease a special interest group that is unhappy because a stormwater utility had to be created in order for something to be done. Now, they're already ticked off. So there's already going to be people who are going to try to make a point. So it's not about the reality of the situation, it's dealing with perception. So we're putting this quasi-judicial committee out there to make everything look nice, to make the council look like they're being proactive in solving problems, when Dave Patek could very clearly do that himself.
Well, I'll tell you what is going to happen, though, and this is an actual argument for your case here rather than my own. But
thanks. I win again.
Well, I don't know that you've won here, but we'll probably be debating this long after the show stops being taped. But a point in your favor is if they still feel aggrieved or egreged after it goes through this whole process, and they're still unhappy with even what the appeals board decides, it is going to end up
in court,
in Winnebago County Circuit
Sure.
Courts, and there a judge who has a law degree
but no
but
experience in
no
hydrology.
hydrology or geology experience is going to have to make a decision.
Exactly.
Or better yet, perhaps a jury. I
Exactly.
don't know that it would go to a jury. It would probably just be a judge ruling. But in any event, there a judge would have to be making a decision.
A layperson.
Precisely. So there's a point
And I
for
guess
your side of the
I
argument.
don't believe in candy coating things to make people feel as though they've actually accomplished something when indeed all it is smoke and mirrors. I think that that's very disingenuous to people. If you really want to have a truthful and honest and respectful relationship with your taxpayers, and you want to build the bridge of trust, then you need to get these people working with the administration that is helping to make decisions and to enforce the decisions that the council has given them directives to do. And if you keep separating these two, the trust is never built because they always think that they're going to skip over the top of these people and get to someone else. So you never have to learn to work with or understand the other side because there's always somebody else that I can go to.
Okay. On the subject of trust and things like that, not that this is an issue of distrust, but I just want to extend an apology both to Mayor Hentz and to the viewers, because we had some technical glitches when we taped that show with him, and because of that our time cues were messed up and the end of the show got completely slaughtered. It was cut off. Mayor Hentz's comments, his final comments did not get aired, and we didn't get to properly say goodbye to folks either. But the final comment that Mayor Hentz did make, we had asked him if he was going to run again. Because his term does expire in April. He had indicated that the way it looks right now is he would not be, that he would like to see some new faces on the council. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but that was the upshot of his comments, and I'm sorry that that you, the viewers, were unable to see that. Just technical glitches in the business of television, so that explains the end of that, and we apologize again. Back to other things, smoking ban. I know that this really chaps you too, and we're kind of on the same page here with this too. There is a smoking ban that by the time this show airs, it will have had its first reading and will be approaching its second reading before the Oshkosh Common Council. And a vote will probably be coming down, I would think, sometime in September, because I would think that there would probably be some amendments.
Well, with this council, it's never, nothing's ever cut and dried and real pretty. And they have to make sure everybody's comfortable with all the verbiage. So,
well, it's going to be coming for a second reading at the very last meeting in August. I mean, if amendments fall into place properly at that time, a vote will probably be taken then. But I would suggest that it probably wouldn't happen until sometime in September, rather. But as far as the smoking ban goes, you and I both just do not support this smoking ban. I'm not a smoker. You are. I used to be. Haven't been for a while. And you know, I still think that this should be a choice issue. I think that we are so busy running around trying to protect, you know, one of the comments that I heard, and I don't remember who said it, if it was Mayor Hentz who said it, or if it was Deputy Mayor Mark Harris who said it, who is actually bringing this thing forward. But someone said that it's more to protect the employees than it is the patrons. Well, you know, here again, people don't have to work in that particular establishment any more than we as consumers of fast food, fine dining, what have you, any more than we have to or be forced to dine in that particular restaurant. There are, frankly, some restaurants in this city that the smoke on certain nights is horrible, and you can smell it the minute you walk in the door, the second you walk in the door, and it does hit you like a ton of bricks. And one of them is Friday nights. You know, that's a horrible night. And what I simply do, I won't necessarily dine in their dining room. You know, I go in, I pick up my food to go, and I go home and I eat it, where I don't have to breathe smoke at the bar. There are choices that can be made, and this, I believe, is a choice issue.
Well, I wrote down a couple of thoughts because obviously I get a little emotional about this kind of stuff, and it's funny because I do believe that there are certain instances where government needs to weigh in on things. I think OSHA is a good example where we protect workers in dangerous situations for ergonomically correct pieces of equipment, making sure safety guards are on so people aren't chopping fingers off and whatnot. I do think that there are things that are responsible ways of legislating and making sure that our workers have a safe work environment. However, saying that, I think that this smoking ban is far, far well and beyond the scope of the City Council. Once again, they're wading in way over their heads and forcing Oshkosh restaurants, because that's all we're really looking at right now is the Oshkosh restaurants. Although when Mayor Hentz was here, he was talking about approaching and talking about an amendment that would include taverns so everyone would be smoke-free. Not only do I feel as though it's beyond the scope and understanding of the council, but I find it extremely hypocritical. Where were these same council members when men and women were losing their jobs at Meritor? They were losing their health insurance, their retirement benefits, and the ones lucky enough to say that they still actually had a job lost half of their hourly wages. I'll tell you where they were. They were hiding under their mother's skirt, saying it wasn't within their purview to get involved in disputes between employer and employee. And yet here we are again. Now, where were these same council members when Hydrate Chemical Company, we all remember Hydrate, don't we? That would be the one that had toxic chemicals I shouldn't say ferried in. They were carted in on a railroad car, left to sit out in a railroad yard, and proceeded to start on fire. Now, this toxic chemical left a plume over the entire south end of Oshkosh.
Displaced many residents and business residents.
Burned for days. Businesses were closed down. Yes. Oshkosh Truck, Parnell's Restaurant. Food was left out because, of course, these people had to be evacuated in very short order. Animals were unfortunately left behind and people had to go back and try to get them. Medication for elderly folks was left. I mean, let's just talk about this. Toxic chemicals being trekked through our entire community on a railroad car, left to sit outside in a railroad yard, plumes over the south part of Oshkosh. Where were these council members protecting the employees and taxpayers of the city of Oshkosh when toxic chemicals were pluming over? And I'm sure somebody must have breathed that in. I mean, I'm sure somebody sucked some of that stuff in. And where were the council members when the company that was found responsible for this problem weren't paying the bills for the businesses who lost wages, who lost revenue, who lost food, who lost party commitments, who had to send people home and productivity was down? When those bills weren't being paid, did these council members jump on the bandwagon to protect these employers and employees and make sure that the payments were taken care of? Did our legal counsel jump in and say, absolutely, we'll draft something? No. We told these businesses, the employees, employers, and general citizens, that they would have to litigate this themselves. And yet, we find this council burring down and honkering down to protect us from secondhand smoke because they choose to walk through a door that they know that there are cigarettes going to be smoked in.
Or choose to work in a restaurant.
And there's a very easy way to get around this. You post on the door that smoking is allowed, which is done all the time. You post on the doors that smoking isn't allowed. Now, if there's minors that are going to be working here, you have them sign off that says that they understand the ills of secondhand smoke. Mom and dad must sign. And if you're worried about a litigious society that's going to sue you later, which was one of the concerns, because of course this is a public health issue, and we're worried about people being litigated to death in 30 years, that was actually what Mayor Hentz had said.
Right.
Then we have these employees who chose to work here sign a waiver that says that they fully understand what the ramifications of choosing to work here could mean to them down the road. Now,
well, let me just interrupt for a moment. I think that when Phil and Lisa Levine from Jeffson Rugby were on our show a few weeks back, they made a very good point, and that is that these minors who are working in restaurants, because they are minors, they are not out serving the alcohol and the food, so therefore they're not even exposed to the secondhand smoke. You know, they are exposed to, as Phil put it, far worse things being back in the kitchen.
yeah.
Of course, OSHA does oversee those things, but, you know, I think we need to use some level-headed thinking here.
Well, you know, Cheryl, I'm glad you said that, because one of the things that I was concerned about is what's next, the perfume police. I mean,
Well, as someone
not to be funny.
No, as someone who does have a problem with heavily perfumed people, in particular women, because you don't find a lot of men who douse the cologne on, but there are a few. But perfume in particular, you know, it makes my nose go absolutely kadaki. And you've seen it, because we've been out in restaurants already, and someone has come by, and the scent just wafts toward us,
but I mean,
and lingers in the air.
It could be considered a health issue. I mean,
course.
if you have an allergy or an adverse reaction, I mean, we'll have the perfume police. And like I said to Steve, I said, if you are truly concerned about the public health issues of this, and I'm certainly not trying to condone anyone smoking or encourage anybody to light up, because that's not where I'm going with this.
Right, this is not a pro-smoking issue.
No, I've made my choices, and I will suffer the consequences if there should be some for me, and do what I need to do based on my choices. But those were my choices. This is a legal substance. I am of age. I made a choice. I live with that. Now, when we're talking about public health issues, one of the things I said is, when are you going after Chem Lawn or True Lawn or whoever else is spraying chemicals on my neighbors' lawns? Because truly, these chemicals that are being sprayed on lawns, it is well documented that people have adverse respiratory disorders, not to mention the fact that when rain hits this stuff, it travels into the storm sewer, which then pollutes our water system, and we already know that we have a problem with runoff. So when do we get the lawn spies?
Where do we draw the line?
Well, the country was founded on basic principles, and one of them is being choice. And if smoking bothers you, you're free to just choose a restaurant that's smoke-free, just like I'm free to turn off the radio and the TV and, you know, roll up my windows. This is what I like. I can roll up my windows when a city bus starts blowing diesel fumes in my window, or when the car in front of me is burning oil. I mean, be careful who we're turning our freedoms of choices over to legislate for us. I mean, choice equates to power and freedom. And if you give that away, you're willing to give mine away today, it'll be yours tomorrow.
Well, I think it is hypocritical of government to step into an issue like this when it is also government, albeit the federal government, not city government
Right.
as who is bringing this forward, but it's the government no less, and we all know that money funnels down, it trickles down, it comes from the federal, and state levels all the way down to county and city levels. It's very hypocritical of government on the one hand to say, naughty, naughty, you're not going to smoke, and by God, we're going to tell you where and when you can smoke. But yet on the other hand, the government is paying tobacco farmers to produce this, and yet they also, I wish I had a third hand, but,
Yeah.
but back on the other hand, they are so heavily taxing the product. I mean, it's
If
just
you wanna
the
make
scales
it-
aren't balanced
Make
at
it
all.
illegal. I mean, if you really want to be an honest legislator, I mean, if you really believe in what you're saying, then by God, you should be lobbying to make it an illegal substance. And guess what? It is never going to happen, because without the taxes that I pay on my pack of cigarettes, the economic stimulus and the revenue generated from my pack of cigarettes, if they have to turn that around into local property tax, there's going to be an awful lot of people who will be awfully
they'll be
glad that I'm
screaming.
smoking.
They'll be screaming their heads off.
Absolutely.
I want to stay on this smoking thing for just a couple of more
Me
minutes,
too.
Mel, because there was a letter to the editor, and I don't know if you saw it, and I am not going to read the whole thing, but this was from Don Kuchera, who I believe, is he not on the CAN board?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Confront addictions
Yes.
now.
And so obviously he is in support of the smoking ban. But just in a nutshell, he was talking about a restaurant owner who came to a city council meeting and said that as a restaurant owner, he should have the right to run his business as he pleases. Mr. Kuchera's comment was that if that's the case, and you assume that despite the above, well, I'll just read it. Is society to assume that despite the above, restaurant owners have the right to expose their employees and customers to the poisons in secondhand smoke with the potential for causing serious diseases and premature death? Where else are poisoning someone and taking a life condoned in our society? And again, this was in the Oshkosh Northwestern. I took it off their website, posted July 31st, so it was about a week or so ago as we tape this now. But I think that this is really a stretch. I mean, basically, he's calling restaurant owners who allow smoking in their restaurant, basically, he's calling them murderers.
Well, it's
in
just
a
like,
sense.
It's like when people refuse to, a cigarette smoker like myself, who turns around and sues a tobacco company. I have a problem with that. I'm sorry. You know that when you put these things in your mouth, that they're not good for you. We've all been well educated. We know that it's habit forming. We know that we're taking in carcinogens. We've made a conscious choice despite all of that, and we got hooked. There is nothing positive about cigarette smoking, okay? But it is my choice. It is a legal substance. And if I choose to do it, by God, then it's my choice to go the way I want to go. My problem is that society has become so irresponsible as a whole. Nobody wants to take accountability. Nobody wants responsibility for their choices. And we actually have an intelligent man like Don Kuchera saying that now it's not even my responsibility for putting the cigarette in my mouth, but that somehow the restaurateur, I'm a cigarette smoker. I could not be having a cigarette and still be taking in secondhand cigarette smoke, correct? So this restaurateur is poisoning me and causing an early death? You have no idea what my family history is. You have no idea how much I smoke or don't smoke. You have no idea about any of those things. But what I think is really interesting is when we had Mark Harris on the show, they said that the secondhand cigarette smoke was the third most preventable cause of death. I was just reading in an article the other day that they said that childhood obesity will surpass the secondhand smoke issues in the next year because of the high rate of body fat in such young children, starting at the age of 7 and 8.
Right, and it will probably be worse in Wisconsin because we rank very high in that category anyway.
So would Mr. Kuchera then make the stretch, and I've done this tongue-in-cheek, is it then McDonald's fault? And trust me, there,
well, those lawsuits are there.
There have been people who actually had the nerve. They stuff Big Macs in their face until they're about ready to burst an aneurysm, and they have the nerve to go back and say, I ate too many Big Macs and I'm fat and it's your fault. Where does the self-control come? I mean, stop eating. It's kind of like me saying, I'm smoking and I'm short of breath. Stop smoking. Be responsible, be accountable. But this is where people like this have come to desensitize people to responsibility and accountability. I have no problem with this organization educating our children, working very hard to distribute information, showing the ills of smoking. You want to show a bad lung, you want to show people with tracheotomies. I have no problem with that because that's reality, that's life. But you don't have a right to decide in my life what's right for me. You just don't. Not when you have a choice of not going to a restaurant or not walking in someplace. But hey, I'd like to outlaw Lycra so all those little gals who are jumping around at the YMCA can't be seen either. But that's just tough luck, Yank.
Well, here's one suggestion that I had. I don't know if it would work or not. You've got some restaurants, Applebee's is one in particular, who during their noon hour, they do not allow smoking in the restaurant, only at the bar. Maybe what the restaurants could do, if public opinion is such that, yes, this is a good thing and we would like to see smoke-free dining, maybe what some of the restaurants could do is try to accommodate everybody rather than just saying, hey, if you don't like the smoke in our restaurant, go somewhere else and smoke or go somewhere else and eat. Rather than turning people away like that, maybe they could try smoke-free nights. I don't know how well that would work.
But they should have the choice to try before it's legislated.
Sure, and try and work with everybody instead of just dismissing them out of hand and saying, go somewhere else and eat if you don't want to breathe the smoke. Or, yes, come in here and dine because you can puff away, your entire lunch hour or whatever. Maybe just try, some smoke-free nights.
We offer you a cigarette and an oxygen tank, is what you're saying? Well, I think it's interesting that this group is suggesting by virtue of their survey that it is almost a referendum, an advisory referendum on what the community thinks. And if the council is actually going to use a survey that used 401 people to actually be their springboard to legislate something of this magnitude that could have the long-lasting ramifications that it could, if that survey is actually the impetus for this, then I think we should have advisory referendums for everything that we do in the city of Oshkosh. Because if 401 people can determine what the business community will and will not live by, then I think that the city of Oshkosh very first advisory should be whether or not we want to continue to spend money in the downtown. Because I can assure you, I can find 401 people that will tell you to ditch that program, and it's their money. They should be able to tell you what they want to do.
That's very true. I don't know where these 401 people came from. I don't know. But I also don't think that the city council is going to use that as their springboard or as the impetus to pass this. I really don't. I think that Breathe Free Oshkosh would like them to. And they're putting it out there as saying, hey, look, this is this. And then you've got a reporter, Alex Hummel from the Northwestern, who in his headline, said that the majority of in fact, he even gave the percentage, didn't he? He gave a percentage of 73 or 74% of, Oshkosh adults want a ban on smoking. Well, that is not a correct statement, as I pointed out when the Levines were on. It's 74% or whatever the percentage was of those surveyed wanted a smoke-free dining
Well, don't you think
experience
it's
in
interesting
Oshkosh.
that when we look through that survey, and it was voluminous. I mean, there were pages and pages to this thing.
It was, and I appreciate them sending that to me also.
But when we look through that, there was actually an age group in there that included 18-year-olds, and they used them and discerned them as adults, which by law they are considered adults.
Sure.
It's interesting that at 18 you can drive, you can smoke, you can vote, and you can go to war, but you can't have a drink of beer.
Right.
Now.
Or serve it.
Or serve it. Now, what I don't understand is you can go buy cigarettes, and you could smoke cigarettes, which seems to be the second coming of the Antichrist here, but you can't have a beer, which doesn't seem to be as bothersome to these people as secondhand smoke. And I understand that this is their gig, it's smoke-free Oshkosh and whatever. I guess what I want to know...
Breathe-free Oshkosh.
Or, well, same difference.
Well, let's get their
You can
name
only
right.
breathe free if nobody's smoking, I guess, so... really, with all due respect, it's admirable that these people want people to quit smoking, because I think they're just looking out, trying to look out for what they think is people's well-being. But you know, sometimes just live and let live. I mean, there's a lot of things that I don't like that people do, but you just can't go around legislating everything that gets in your craw. You'd like to, like I'd like to outlaw stupidity, but you know, where do you draw the line on that one, Cheryl?
We'd be building prisons so fast.
Well, but I mean, and you know, where's the line drawn?
Exactly. Anything else on smoking that you can...
Well, you know, I could go on and on and on, but I'm a little winded.
Probably from all those cigarettes you
I was
had
just
earlier today.
We shouldn't laugh about that, because there's going to be some kid that watches this show and they're going to go, Melanie Bloechl's a cigarette smoker and she thinks it's really funny.
But we're not condoning smoking.
And it's not funny. I mean, it's not... I think that we get a little carried away. I mean, you know, we don't have a problem with watching violence on TV. We don't, you know, women are being raped and kids are being molested, and the music is awful. The reality shows are a disaster. Nobody seems to be having a problem with that, but God, if you light up a cigarette, you're killing everybody.
Yeah.
You're killing the kids.
I agree. All right, council chamber decorum. This is another thing that we discussed with Mayor Hentz when he was on the show. At the last council meeting in July, there were some...
It's a doozy, I guess. I'm sorry I missed it.
Well, you did see part of it. I
Well,
know
I
you
didn't
did,
get to
because
see
we were on the phone with each other at the time. But
I didn't get to see the hoot and hollering,
the big explosion. Well, there were 3 citizens who got up at the end, and you know, they're regulars. They're regular speakers.
I don't like that term, regulars, because it kind of connotates like they're not welcome there.
Well, I think that they're welcome, and I don't... When I say regular, I don't mean that they're unwelcome. I just mean they are there on a regular basis.
Okay, I like the way that sounds to better.
You know, as opposed to someone
as opposed of the majority of Oshkosh who never shows up.
Or, you know, those of us who show up when we just have something that we want to talk about. I mean, however, now I am a regular viewer. I can't always get there because of my work and so forth, but I always make sure that I watch it on TV.
Well, I just want to make sure that people don't think by saying regular that there's a negative connotation to that, because reading some of the stuff in the paper when they say regular council...
Well, I don't know what they mean by it, but I mean, you know, someone who is there on a regular basis, who attends practically every council meeting.
Keeping their thumb on what's going on.
That's right. Finger on the pulse of the community.
You bet, yeah.
In any event, these folks who attend the majority of these meetings,
thank you.
They became a little raucous. One did not want to adhere to the 5-minute rule, and when he was sort of shooed away from the podium, proceeded to still stand at his seat and turn around and continue speaking to the crowd as another person was up at the podium ready to speak.
Corked off, huh?
Well, yes, he was. And that was Gordon Dooley, who also has a show here on Channel 2. You know, Gordon is a wonderful man, but that was inappropriate. And he has since written a letter to the editor saying that, you citizens have a right to make citizen statements. I don't know that they have a right. I mean, certainly we have a right to our opinion, and we have a right to express our opinion. I don't know that citizens have a right to express the opinion at a business meeting of the Common Council. Do I think that citizen statements should be done away with? Absolutely not. I think they're an integral part of the Common Council meetings. But if Mr. Dooley, or anyone for that matter, wants to make citizen statements, I think that they need to recognize that whether they agree or disagree with these folks, they are elected officials. They do need to be treated with some respect. They also need to give some respect to the citizenry, and that may play a factor in this, but I don't think that giving respect to the citizens means giving them carte blanche to talk for however long they want to, ad nauseum, and say some of the things that some of these folks were saying. I mean, another one, Ken Bender, who is also a nice guy, who has a lot of good ideas in some areas, but he got up there and he started swearing at them, told the mayor he could go to hell. Things like this just are not appropriate. They are not appropriate behavior.
Sorry, it broke a snicker there. I wasn't prepared for that one.
Well, that's precisely what he said, and he didn't say it in a controlled manner like I just did. I mean, he sort of screamed it, not shrieking, but he yelled it. He yelled it at Mayor Hentz. I don't agree with everything the council does, and I certainly don't agree, as regular viewers of this show know, with everything that Mayor Hentz does. But, I would not in a million years dream of going into council chambers and telling him to go to hell. I wouldn't even say that if I saw him on the street or called him on the phone. That's just inappropriate behavior. And I think that, we have a privilege to speak at these meetings. Other communities don't necessarily have citizen statements. And I think that if some of these folks think that it's so bad here, maybe they need to look at some of these other communities and see how they conduct citizen statements, or if they even allow citizen statements. And then maybe they would be a little bit more appreciative of what we have here. And again, I don't think that citizen statements should be done away with, but I think that some decorum needs to be exercised by people who are speaking. And along with that, I think that the council needs to show some respect to the citizenry.
Well, I think that, I heard what Mayor Hentz had said after kind of the whole hullabaloo had gone on. And I did not witness, the citizens portion of it. I can tell you, as a person who sat there for 11 and a half years, while we defined the ability to speak at citizen statements a privilege, I think one of the things that council members have to remember is it is a privilege to be able to serve your community as in an elected capacity. As one that was blessed to be able to serve, and sometimes it was a blessing and a curse all at the same time. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. It was the most wonderful job you learn to love to hate. You know what I mean? It was difficult. And there were times when I forgot what I was there for and who I was there for and what my charge was. You get complacent sometimes, you get tired, you get cranky. You don't stop being a human being just because you put your butt in a chair on the other side of the dais instead of, I was still Melanie Bloechl, a taxpayer. I was still Melanie Bloechl that had all the foibles that I was elected with. But there was an expectation that all of a sudden I conducted myself with some regalness, and regal just wasn't one of those things that I think you could ever use to describe me. I mean, I never tried to be disrespectful to people, but I think that I was. I mean, there were times when I just simply wasn't as active a participant in listening as I should have been. And I think that shows. I think people know when you're not being attentive and when you're either wantingly being disrespectful or unwantingly being disrespectful. And it's body language. If you're doing the fidget thing and picking your fingernails or looking at your watch, which unfortunately happens a lot.
Yes.
It sends a lot of messages to people. And I think that with this particular council and even the one before, and even the one before which I was the mayor. I think that there were things that we could have done better to make people more comfortable coming to us. I mean, we're just regular people too. I mean, I think sometimes this, I would never think to talk to them like that. Well, why not? They're just like you and I. And I lost my temper as a council member and said things that later I thought, oh my God, why did I say that? Why did I say it that way? I said it in anger. I should have been smarter. And I was very apologetic and felt badly about it. Just as people on the other side of the dais, you and you understand those things. It is human nature to make mistakes, to make foibles. But I think where this frustration is coming from, and I talked to Steve Hentz about this, is that I think people on the other side of the dais, the taxpayers coming to talk, feel as though some of the things that the council is doing now are silly and demeaning. At least I do. When you go up to talk, you have 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. You get down to about 1 minute, and this is what happened to me. Mark Harris was sitting in for Steve Hentz, and got to be 1 minute, and I'm talking, and I'm trying to make this eye contact to get some ideas. Are you listening? Are you getting it? Am I making my point? And they held up this little piece of paper and it said 1 minute. And I'm thinking, okay, so obviously you took your mind off of what I was saying in order to find that little piece of paper down here that said 1 minute.
And it made you lose your train of thought,
It made me lose my train of thought, because now I'm thinking, oh my God, I only have 1 minute and everybody's watching this. And then it seemed like a second later, there's a little stop sign. And I gotta tell you, I was on that council for 11 and a half years. I'm used to the cameras. I'm used to people being out in the audience, speaking in front of people. I was nervous. I mean, I was standing now in front of my peers that I served with, and it was a very different experience. And it was very nerve-wracking. Sure. And then to have that damn little sign, see, now that's not decorum.
Well, but you weren't telling someone to go to hell.
Well, but I mean, maybe I would have had I had another minute. I mean, my concern is that don't make people feel childish. I mean, if you're wrapping up and it's been 5 minutes, Mrs. Bloechl, it's been 5 minutes. Do you need another minute? And like I said to Steve earlier in our previous show, there's not that many people coming to the council meeting to voice their opinions, pro, con, like they even give a rat's behind.
Right.
What is the big deal if you give them another minute or two? Now, I understand sometimes it's difficult to listen to the same concerns and complaints. However, that doesn't mean that you don't have a responsibility to do that. And you can talk to people. You don't have to make them feel like a child, like, okay, you've had your time now, it's a timeout, sit down, shut up. I mean, that's
he did say that he would consider getting rid of the signs.
And I
think you made a good point with him, and it was well received.
He was very good about it, and I hope that they will sincerely take that into consideration. And on the other side, I know that when people come up there, it's very heartfelt, it's very emotional. These people who come on a regular basis care so much about the city of Oshkosh. That's why they're there. And this is the place that they love most in the world. So anything that they're going to talk about is very emotional and very heartfelt. So it's hard for them not to find themselves at that boiling point. And I'm in talking to Ken, I'm sure that he would not, if he could go back, he would choose words differently, maybe a little bit more carefully. But he's got the same flaws as I do, no filter from here to here, and your heart is on your sleeve, and you say what you think, and sometimes you wish you would have done it better.
And being the gentleman that I think Ken has shown that
always,
he is.
Yeah, always.
I would hope that he would be a gentleman again and apologize at the next meeting.
I think he will, and
we'll see.
I think that, it is a reciprocal kind of apology. I think that when people have concerns about staff members, I understand what Mayor Hentz was talking about, where maybe that's not the most appropriate place to air those opinions. But if they have tried to share their concerns with the administration and really nothing's being done, which may or may not be the case. I don't know that that's what happened. but sometimes they feel as though they're given no alternative, but then to kind of put it all out there for people and see if other people have the same concerns. And I'll tell you, other people have had the same concerns about who's really running the city of Oshkosh. And I got to tell you, it takes guts to say things that other people are thinking but won't stand up and say for fear that they'll look foolish. Ken doesn't always say it right. I never said it right all the time. I made lots of mistakes. But there's one thing, I'll tell you, if I'm ever in a foxhole in the city of Oshkosh and this community's in trouble, I'd want Ken Bender in my foxhole, because I know he'd watch my back and I know he cares about this community. He's made mistakes. We've all made them. We learn from them. The council needs to be more active listeners, and the citizenry just needs to give them an opportunity to do their job a little bit better.
Okay.
And better instruction.
We're running out of time again. I cannot believe this.
Come on. We just have so much fun doing this. I hope you have as much fun watching it as we do doing it.
Well, actually, people have of all the shows that people like, it's these Another Viewpoint, where you and I just kind of bounce ideas off of each other and share our complaints and joys about things
well, and I hope people
they like the most.
Yeah, I hope that you see the website address for On Oshkosh, and if you have ideas for a show, if you have questions that you would like us to ask a guest that you'd like us to get on, send them to us. Between Cheryl and I, neither one of us are afraid to ask a whole lot of anything. So, and write us a letter, drop us a line. If you hate us, you love us, we're mediocre, you'd like us to do something different, give us a chance to make the show better and get as many people interested as we can.
Yeah, we do have a few minutes left, and I just want to touch on a couple of things. This was an issue that had come up a few months back with the Common Council. They wanted to change the one-way streets into two-way streets downtown.
Oh, I hated that idea too.
There are some stop signs at the corner of let's see, Wagoo and State, right by the Oshkosh Northwestern there.
Okay.
And, it used to be that the stop signs were for the traffic that was heading east on Wagoo. Now the stop signs are for those people heading north and south on State. And not that I'm proposing eliminating parking on Wagoo, because I'm not, but if city administrators are out there, listening or watching, you might want to take a look at that stop sign situation at that intersection. Because when you've got cars parked on Wagoo Street, it is difficult to see traffic coming down Wagoo, and somebody is going to get nailed there.
Sure.
As they start.
Why don't they just put them back the way they were?
Well, they could do that or make it a four-way stop. I mean, with the 100 block now starting to get finished and residents moving into that apartment building and so forth, there's going to be more traffic in that area, and maybe doing four-way stops would be a thing to do.
Speaking of, can I real quick?
Sure.
Because you were talking about controlled intersections. One of the things that I didn't get a chance to say to Mayor Hentz and the other council members whenever we've had them on is, as a person who lives over in the West Haven area, and actually we live in Westway between Witzel and 9th, I was so appreciative of the bridge, and by the way, this is the bridge that we've been waiting about 10 and a half years to actually get built, and it's the bridge that goes over Sawyer Creek on West Haven Drive. It finally got completed. They did a beautiful job. It's just absolutely beautiful. Blends it. They did just such a nice job with all the woods and trying to keep as much of that as they could. And the other thing that they did is they finally put controlled lights at the intersection of West Haven and Witzel. That was just a horrible, horrible intersection. They put a controlled intersection there. It is like a godsend. They did just a beautiful job. So, we beat these ladies and gentlemen up pretty regularly, and shame on me because I know how that feels. But, but I want to tell them when they did something really good, and this is something that's really good. I'd just like to add that I hope that if this city council has any jurisdiction and any ability, that we might be able to see also a controlled intersection at Witzel and Oakwood Road, especially in light of the devastating accident and fatality that took place there just not too terribly long ago. It is that is a very, very busy and very dangerous. I mean, I live out there, travel it every day. Very dangerous intersection, and my heart just goes out to both families. So if we can do anything about that, why not? I mean, we spend money on foolishness. Let's do something smart with it.
And in the last couple of minutes that we have, I want to briefly touch on Sawdust Days. Now, I went to that as the 3 or 4 day event progressed, or 5 day event. I can't remember which it is, but as the event progressed, the stench and the filth got worse and worse and worse. And then you had the porta potties right by where they're preparing and selling food.
And the ponies by the food.
Yes, the exploitation of certain reptiles. They had reptiles. Now they had a sign posted. There were 3 different reptile tents or whatever. They had signs posted that these animals were in cages or whatever. Well, they were in cages, but in some cases the doors were open. Now people were coming out of there frightened. I mean, you could hear people talking about this because...
Were they screaming like girls?
They weren't screaming like girls, but they were talking and complaining about this. And, these animals, reptiles, what have you, if you're going to put them on display, and I think the city parks department or whoever oversees this needs to do something about it, these things should not be able to get out. I don't know if they were drugged and that's why they were, so dormant in there and not coming out toward people.
Well, they had gators in there too, and didn't they have their mouths taped shut?
That's the other thing. Exploitation of these alligators or crocodiles. They had 2 of them on display that you could actually touch, but they had their mouths taped shut, presumably so they wouldn't bite people. But this is exploiting a reptile, an exotic reptile. It should not be allowed. We need to have somebody look into stopping this. And then, here was the kicker to the whole thing, Mel, then the guy who runs this exotic traveling extravaganza, he's got a jar sitting there with a sign on it saying, to make donations to feed the animals. Well, in order to eat, they're going to have their mouths untaped, but I didn't contribute any money. I mean, it's exploiting an exotic animal or reptile, and it just shouldn't be allowed.
Well, and I guess my difficulty with that was the heat that was involved in that whole weekend. That was an extremely hot period. And my concern, I got so many phone calls, and people know that I'm not on the council anymore. They were so upset by the look of Menominee Park, the smell of Menominee Park, and also letting people, again, in from outside of Oshkosh, camp in Menominee Park, dig up the park to burn wood, encampment. I'm going to be at the Parks Board meeting to talk about this, and that is, I believe, August 11th.
Good for you. Good for you.
We'll be talking about it.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of Eye on Oshkosh. And I don't know where there's my camera right there. Everything, they were all hopping around. That's going to do it for this edition of Eye on Oshkosh. We'll see you next time. You keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh. Take care.